Hello everyone, this is the Biz and you're back with another video, and ever since Outrage Dragonite was buffed, I had this crazy idea as to whether or not I can make the Drain Crown a viable item for this Pokemon. So I decided to test every single attack related item to see if I could actually make this work, and I ended up finding my new favorite way to play a Dragonite, which, spoilers, does involve using a Drain Crown. So I hope you're all excited. First I'll be talking about the build itself that I used, how I arrived to that build, and then finally I'll talk about the different other items I tried and which items I think could be good, depending on your playstyle. Hopefully this is helpful, and let's get into things. First of all, of course, the Drain Crown itself. What is the Drain Crown and what does it exactly do? So the Drain Crown, its flat stats is that it gives a little bit of HP, a little bit of attack, but what it does is that it restores HP based on the damage dealt by your auto attacks. Now this might sound that it's a great item for your basic attackers, your auto attackers, ADCs, but unfortunately it's a very small amount of HP that it actually restores, so it doesn't actually work too well for those types of Pokemon. In fact, it doesn't work well for many different types of Pokemon, it just works for a very niche amount of Pokemon, one of those being Dragonite. Because when you use Dragonite, specifically the Outrage build, you use Outrage, and then after using Outrage, you're clicking your basic attacks. Your basic attacks are doing a high amount of damage, and since you're doing a high amount of damage, you're actually restoring a good amount of HP back. It's not a crazy amount, but it's still a decent amount. So this brings us to our second item. The second item that I decided to use for this build, that I think is the most consistent and probably the best, is the Rapid Fire Scarf. Now the Rapid Fire Scarf is an item in which you use basic attacks, and the more you use basic attacks, you will actually use your basic attacks faster. There's a cooldown for this, but my main idea was, if you're using Drain Crown and you're restoring HP based off of your basic attacks, if you use more basic attacks in a quicker amount of time, you will be able to gain that HP back faster. And this does work pretty well. These two items synergize very well with one another, and it allows for this build to be pretty good, especially when there's so much burst in this current state of Unite. You can actually get your HP back in a relatively quick amount of time too. For the third item, I think there's a bit more variability. It depends again on how exactly you want to play, but I found the most success personally using the Scope Lens as my third item. The Scope Lens, for those who don't know, increases your critical hit rate chance, and it also allows your critical hits to do more damage. This works incredibly well for this playstyle that I've designed for this Outrage Dragonite build. First of all, you're using your Drain Crown, which gives you a small amount of HP back, then you're using your Rapid Fire Scarf, which is allowing you to do your basic attacks in a quicker fashion, and finally the Scope Lens allows for these basic attacks that are under the influence of the Outrage to actually hit even harder and do a burst amount of damage, which gives you a burst of healing as well. All three items work incredibly well with one another, and this is the build that I found to be overall the best build for Dragonite. I might have numbers on the screen, maybe, I'm not sure, but I did end up having the highest amount of damage using this build, and on a separate occasion I ended up having the highest amount of healing for this build. Using this build, I found the average amount of healing to be over 25,000. I was about 30,000 healing every single game using this build, and my damage was a bit of a range, but my highest amount of damage that I reached was 78,000. I'm sure you can reach higher, but it felt good because you could do a good amount of damage and you could stay alive in the team fight, so you could consistently do damage. The opposing Pokemon couldn't KO you. It just felt like a great combination to have these items together, and I loved it. I really did love it. Another build that I think is pretty viable is using Rapid Fire Scarf, Weakness Policy, and Drain Crown. This is kind of similar, but it just allows for a little bit more healing. You might be a little bit more tankier, especially if you haven't played this playstyle before. It might feel a little bit more comfortable, but I just found that I wasn't outputting enough damage. The highest damage I could reach was around 70k, like 68k or so, but I couldn't break that. My healing was pretty high for this build, consistently, but overall I found that the Scope Lens was just the better playstyle. You're doing damage, you're healing as well. You just have to play very aggressively, and you have to be quite sure of yourself when you're going into team fights. That is the best way to play the Rapid Scope Drain Crown build. For other items, I guess honorable mentions, or not honorable mentions, but other items that I decided to try, Razor Claw I found to be pretty rough. I didn't enjoy playing with the Razor Claw, with the Rapid Fire Scarf, and Drain Crown. Just felt like it was a little bit of a few things, but it wasn't really doing enough damage or enough healing, so would not really recommend using Razor Claw. I tried the attack weight. I don't know if it's just me, but I struggle stacking attack weight Dragonite, so sometimes it was high amounts of damage, but it didn't feel consistent enough to feel safe using it. Maybe people like attack weight, but that's just not the way I could find success, at least using this build. I tried Rapid Fire Scarf, Muscle Band, and Drain Crown at some points. Again, these were games where I felt like my healing wasn't high enough. I felt like sometimes I wasn't doing enough damage. It just didn't feel that good. And finally, I also decided to do a few games without using the Drain Crown, just like messing around with Weakness Policy, Rapid Fire Scarf, Muscle Band, just a few different other combinations to see what my healing would be if I were not using Drain Crown. I found my average healing was between 10 to 15k. If I had Weakness Policy, I would sometimes hit around 20k, but the Drain Crown allowed me to go past that 20k healing point, and I could really see myself lasting a bit longer in these team fights. So overall, what items would I think are the best to use in conjunction with the Drain Crown? Well, of course, Drain Crown is your first item. I would say the next best item to 100% use is Rapid Fire Scarf. The third item again gets a little bit, subjective, but I would say the Scope Lens was what I found to be the best overall. It was the most consistent. It was also the most fun, in my opinion, to use these three items together. The next item I would recommend if you really want to experiment is Weakness Policy. This works well if you're starting out and you are a bit nervous, you're not sure of yourself as to whether you could pull it off with the Scope Lens Weakness Policy. It allows you to ease into it. I felt like the laning phase could sometimes be easier if you're using the Weakness Policy, so that could also work pretty well. After this point, I feel like the other items are not too good, but if I had to rate them, the items that I had the most success with were Attack Weight, followed by Muscle Band, and then finally Razor Claw. I think Muscle Band may be a little bit better than Attack Weight, depends on your playstyle, and Razor Claw I just struggled a lot with, especially using these items. Overall, I hope you found this helpful and informative. If you did, please let me know. These types of videos take a lot of time to put together. I did one for Zacian a while back, and I was testing every single item, and it takes a lot of games because I don't want to just have one game and say, hey, this is the best build. I have over 25, I have almost 30 games I think using different builds to try and determine what I think is the best, and then I have this whole spreadsheet where I write the damage, the healing, and all these different things. So if you do find these helpful, please let me know. It takes a lot of time to make these. I generally don't ask people to subscribe, but if you made it this far, subscribing would be pretty cool. I mean, you might like some of the other content on this channel if you made it all the way here. And yeah, for the game in the background, I'm using the Scope Lens, Drain Crown, Rapid Fire Scarf, so the build that I believe to be the overall best if you're trying to use Drain Crown for this Pokemon. And I hope you all enjoy. Cheers. Okay. Nice, this is a big kill if we get this. When we get this, there we go. Cool. That's our Outrage Dragonite. Okay. Why could we score that right before the... Okay, whatever. Ooh, that's enormous. Okay. Yep. This is for that Unite move! Okay, good stuff. Oh my gosh, that's so much damage, that hurts. Huge. Goodbye.
What a goal! You're on fire! What a goal!
Nope.
What a goal!
Goodbye.
What a goal!
Love to see the damage though, that was pretty good. I could feel it. Felt decent. I don't know if the healing was much more though. That's the big question, right? Like, was the healing actually coming through or not? Damage wise, it's pretty clean, Can't deny, okay.